No. We were watching the ContraPoints versus Blair White thing. One of the points that ContraPoints made was that Blair White was nasty to someone called Zinnia Jones. What Blair White said in response to this was that Zinnia Jones made out that Blair White is like a genocider, or a supporter of genocide, should we say. And this video is fact check. Blair White is wrong about transgender kids part 1. And hey, maybe this will be a good intro to the debate, which we'll be watching shortly. That's this here. Brad Palumbo's channel. We are going to watch it, don't worry. I'm very prepared to be rather disappointed because apparently there's not much fireworks. I don't know if Blair really knows a huge amount about Brianna Wu. And Brad Palumbo's cool with her, you know. It is what it is. But yeah, fact check. Blair White is wrong on transgender kids from 8 years ago, just to be clear. And I'm not a fan of Zinnia Jones, I'll be upfront. I watched a couple of videos of her on my channel like a month or two ago, and quite frankly, this person could have put me off transitioning with the videos that I saw very, very easily. But anyway, yeah, there we go. Let's see what she's on about. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about trans kids. I live in hope that someone might convince me that I'm wrong about some of this shit. It just hasn't happened yet. But anyway.
Hi, welcome to Gender Analysis. So, someone by the name of Blair White made a video about gender transition treatment for transgender children and adolescents. And I'm going to fact check it.
Blair did ruin herself. She's also fabulously wealthy and very successful, so I don't know. She's probably not losing much sleep over it.
And of course, it begs the question of transgender children in real life. And I'm sure I chose a title for this video that lets you guys know upfront my feelings about children transitioning, but let me just say, I am against it. I am against it. I am against it.
Same.
I have dealt with so many people trying to convince me that.
I don't know if it's because I desisted, but someone coming out just feels like they're announcing a really unhealthy integration of their repressed femininity and AGP to everyone. Yeah, potentially. I mean, it's attention seeking, really. That's mainly what it is. But hey, hope you're good. Anima Anonymous, excuse me.
It's a good decision to allow children to go on hormones or puberty blockers and, you know, start their transition really, really early, and I've never been convinced.
It's important to be clear on the respective roles of puberty-blocking drugs,
Trans woman, by the way,
and hormone therapy in the treatment of trans youth. Many of these kids have already been consistently presenting and living socially as their identified gender.
That isn't a good thing. If you... Did you know puberty blockers are 100% safe and reversible? Listen, if this person says this, then I'm just... yeah, that's it. I was going to say something.
Many of these kids have already been consistently presenting and living...
Yeah, here's the thing. Things like social transition, you're putting them on the start, you're putting them on the train, and then setting it off. Like, necessarily, if you socially transition your kid, they're probably going to go on to puberty blockers. Then they're probably going to go on to... What is it? Cross-sex hormones, which, even if you're going to argue that generally puberty blockers are reversible, definitely not the case for cross-sex hormones. So, like, it's part of the problem. It's because it's part of the chain. That's a big part of the problem.
Socially as their identified gender for years. When this treatment is indicated by thorough evaluation and proper diagnosis...
Hang on. The Endocrine Society's guidelines suggest starting puberty blockers for transgender children when they hit a stage of development known as Tanner Stage 2, usually around 10 or 11 years old for a girl, 11, 12 years old for a boy. Does anyone know what's coming? Does anyone know what I'm about to do? Tanner Stage 2, boys. Does anyone know what's coming? Because I'm going to play this video for the millionth time. I don't care if people are bored of hearing this. Tanner Stage 2.
The second was an observation that I had.
Who we are hearing is Marcy Bowers, former head of WPATH. Personally did surgery on people like Jazz Jennings. If that is not a shining endorsement of this person's skills, I don't know what is. Anyway.
The second was an observation that I had.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deep Calm. Thanks for the $5.
Every single child or adolescent who was truly blocked at Tanner Stage 2 has never experienced orgasm. I mean, it's really about zero.
The Endocrine Society's guidelines suggest starting puberty blockers for transgender children when they hit a stage of development known as Tanner Stage 2.
These are just assigned male at birth, so trans feminine, and it's because they never in their lives are exposed to testosterone.
Like, what? Is the Endocrine Society just full of shit? Or more likely, I mean, hey, this is Frontline 2015. More likely, this is so experimental that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So yeah, you want to never orgasm again? Follow the advice of the Endocrine Society. Nuts.
That doesn't change. So blockers prevent the rise of testosterone, and they don't really go on testosterone at or around.
Oh, by the way, I never do this. Shout out Rubble of Empires. That's where this clip comes from. Oops, excuse me.
On surgery or into adulthood. And so we don't know. They're going to have this sensation. There's no question about that. But are they going to be able to achieve sexual satisfaction? It's important in relationships. And I know that from my work with female genital mutilation survivors, that the lack of being able to be intimate with a partner is very important. And so this is what really raised the red flag for me, is to say, look, we need to have our eyes open about it. I think it's been beneficial talking about it.
And by the way, when I talk about how I don't trust a lot of these organizations and that I don't accept arguments of, well, the APA says this, or WPATH says that, or the Endocrine Society says this, as an argument for transitioning children or trans healthcare in general, this kind of thing is why. This is a literal fucking example of why, because they're fucking wrong. By Marcy Bauer's own words, head of WPATH.
I know Joe and many others have reported to me, they've changed their approach a little bit in their informed consent models. And
by the way, Joanna Olson Kennedy in the middle here, what was it she was saying? Something like, oh, if you have a mastectomy as a teenager and you regret it, just get implants. Amazing. What else did she do? Oh yeah, commissioned this long ass study, expensive ass study on transitioning children. And then what happened? She sat on the results because she was worried about it being used politically. So ask yourself what the results probably were in that case.
And that we're talking about masturbation now. We're talking about, okay, that's an area of the body that's got very dysphoric for you, but you know what? It's all a penis is just a large clitoris. I mean,
okay, we don't listen. This is the video. Anyone is welcome to look this up. Pause the video. Look this up if you need to see the full thing. But I hope you see the fucking massive disconnect here.
Puberty blocking drugs, not sex hormones, are given to trans children near the onset.
Not sex hormones. Yet, overwhelmingly, by the way, the kids that are on puberty blockers go on to sex hormones
of their initial puberty, usually starting around ages 10 to 12. These drugs reduce their testosterone or estrogen to very low levels, temporarily halting the physical changes of puberty due to hormones. Trans children receive these injections or implants regularly for years in order to hold off these changes. This allows more time for them to be evaluated frequently by medical and psychological professionals, and helps children be certain of whether they ultimately want to.
Helps them be certain. It pushes them along the path. What was it, 95% or something? If they're on puberty blockers, they'll keep going. And they're getting all this affirmation for how long because of all this, because of the social transition, stuff like that, all the attention they get. And the fact that you decide to change your name and all that. Everyone at school now knows you as something else. It's going to be pretty embarrassing in a couple of years to have to go back on that. Oh, no, call me John or call me Mark or whatever the fuck again. You know what I mean? Nuts.
Transition.
All these went through puberty like everyone else. True.
If they choose not to transition, they can stop taking puberty blockers at any time, and their initial puberty will simply resume and continue normally. This is why the medical field, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Psychiatric Association, classifies these blockers as fully reversible.
Well, I mean, if your previous source is anything to go by, not really sure about that. And when you say completely irreversible, is that true? What about the bone problems one might experience? What about the cognitive delays that might experience? This is not like, and I mean, this is like very old info as well. This video is from 2016, 2015, 2012.
These are safe medications that
Unless you're on them too long. Yep, very true. There are lots of problems that can come from taking puberty blockers. I'm pretty sure they won't even give them to all precocious puberty cases, because sometimes the precocious puberty is less harmful than taking the puberty blockers, depending. You know what I mean?
that have been in use among both trans and cis children.
And like another thing, sorry, I'm pausing quite frequently. I'll skip back a bit. Another thing to consider is that the kid stops growing. They don't advance along with all of their peers. They get kind of left behind. It can have social impacts on you as well as physical. So like, let's say it was fully reversible in your case. What about the social impacts you might have had from being stunted? A PBS special documentary titled "When Transgender Children Transition" is imposing the deceptive concept that there are trans children to begin with, rather than kids with gender dysphoria. Yeah, to call them trans children is icky. I hate that word, but that's what I'm using.
Reversible. These are safe medications that have been in use among both trans and cis children for decades now. Again, puberty blockers
So far, what have we had? Well, these organizations say that it's good.
are not hormones. They stop hormones. If after this time on puberty blockers, a teenager does
They flashed this up again. Oh my god, this has aged horribly. This has aged horribly. By the way, so you start puberty blockers at 10 or 11 years old. The same guidelines suggest giving cross-sex hormones at 16. So what, they've been on the puberty blockers for like 4 to 6 years? I'm pretty sure you're only meant to use them for a couple of years or so. I'm sure I read somewhere that they're not recommending more than a couple of years. Is that right? I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And it's so hard to find like reliable information on this shit. Effects of puberty blockers are non-permanent. Is that always true? Is that always true? I mean, it can't possibly be, because you can't just stay on them for the rest of your fucking life. That does not work. The NHS no longer says so. Yeah, I'm sure there were recommendations that you shouldn't use them for more than a couple of years. That like the problems kind of start occurring when you've been using them for too long. I don't know. I can't find it offhand. This is probably going to annoy the crap out of me. But yeah, is there not an inference that means you start puberty blockers between 10 and 12 and then start cross-sex hormones at 16? You won't have stopped using the puberty blockers, will you? Because if you stop using them, you get the puberty. So what would be the point in stopping it? 6 years, potentially. Are you really supposed to be on puberty blockers for 6 years? Like, I don't know, like, I wish I could just put a thing into Google and get a fucking answer. In some places, PBs start as young as 9 and opposite hormones started as young as 14. Yeah. Now, I'm sure there were like recommendations they shouldn't be used for more than like 2 years or something. Maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but let's try the UK. We're a bit more smart about some of this shit sometimes. Gov.uk. I just want to know what their recommendations are. Puberty blockers. Unsafe prescribing environment. I mean, they're stopping it, so they're not gonna. Shit, this is really annoying, because they're not gonna recommend any like the time, because they're stopping it. Fuck's sake, how do I? Mermaids, not trusting them with a fucking anything, frankly. I don't know. I'll do more digging about this, but I'm sure that this is really not how they're recommending using them. And that usually people are saying, oh, it's just for a few years and they use hormones or something. This is saying up to 6 years. You know what I mean? Let me just check chat. Has anyone got anything for me? I'll try one more, okay? Because this is really actually quite important. Because this is what I mean. I'm sure the problems are like from taking them for too long. You know what I mean? But I can't remember how long they're saying. After this point, it's going to start getting a bit dangerous. You know what I mean? I'm sorry, I just lose my mind with this shit. I'll get back to the cave. I don't blame you. I do not blame you. Really quite fucked up. Change is permanent. 10 or 11. Take them for a few years. How's the medication given? Possible side effects and complications. Is this what we call fully reversible, by the way? If it's fully reversible, what about all this shit? What about all this shit? Long-term effects. So it's not fully reversible. Yeah, we're gonna watch that. I'm just trying to see if I can find, because I'm really not sure about. Well, I mean, a whole reason I'm not fucking sure about this is because they suggest starting at Tanner stage 2, which Marcy Bowers is saying, when you do that on boys, none of them can orgasm.
Does choose to transition, they can start taking estrogen or testosterone at age 16. These hormones do produce more permanent changes that are not necessarily reversible. While Blair White describes this
More permanent changes that are not necessarily reversible. I guess there's one way of putting it. Fucking hell.
as
really, really early.
keep in mind that this treatment results in a puberty that occurs years later than it usually would, along with being subject to ongoing medical monitoring and control.
You are awesome, Mary.
Thank you so much, Purple Nightshade, for the $10. Thank you.
And listen, there are very few topics in this world that I feel like, being transgender myself, I have a bit more of an expert.
So she hasn't proved Blair White wrong on this. She just said these organizations say it's good. That's not an argument. What if those organizations are wrong? Then you're fucked.
Expertise on, but this is definitely one of them.
There are others who also have expertise on this topic, such as major medical organizations and
It's the same thing again. It's the same thing again. Is this the whole video? Like, oh man. And we already know that at least one of those organizations, their stance, as stated here, has aged fucking poorly.
many hospitals. In addition to the American Academy
Encouraged to become familiar with, okay, wow, amazing. They can choose to stop puberty suppressing medication, although they probably fucking won't, because that's how it is. Those two will continue to have a transgender identity life. This is dodgy as fuck. Human rights campaign. Human rights campaign. Fuck those fucking losers. Human rights campaign. During this time, a child can choose to stop taking the puberty-suppressing medications. However, most children who experience significant gender dysphoria in early adolescence will continue to have a transgender identity throughout life. There is evidence that this is not the case. Puberty-suppressing medication can drastically improve these children's lives. Really? Because, listen, the Dutch protocol suggests it as such. There's issues with that. There was, what was it? There was a UK study that tried to replicate the findings from the Dutch model. They failed. They couldn't find an improvement. And like, the other thing is, there's evidence out there as well that plenty of kids will like desist from their transgender identity. Like just by going through puberty. It's just a phase that some people go through. So the problem becomes, how do you know which ones will desist and which won't? You kind of don't. And until there's a way of screening that, why the fuck would I be down with this shit? You know what I mean? Puberty suppressing medication can improve these children's life. It can also fuck them up. It can also cause problems in their life. And the other thing is, these ones that take the medication, if they start socially transitioning, they're getting affirmed. They're getting pushed along this path so fucking much. Gender discordance associated with lower rates of mental health problems when treated in adolescence. Where's that from? No idea. Therefore, treatment might be in the best interest of the adolescent. Lower rates of mental health problems. Wow, amazing.
Of Pediatrics and the American Psychiatric Association, the proper use of puberty blockers for trans youth is also supported by the American Psychological Association.
It's just appeal to authority. Oh well, by the way, these people normally when you hear them talk about like these kind of left-leaning people, should I say, when they're talking about like American healthcare, they're normally talking about how shit it is. But suddenly when it's like trans shit, it's like amazing. Okay, amazing, great.
The American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry.
By the way, also, yes, I'm pausing a lot. Very American-centric. Very American-centric. So you're kind of ignoring other countries. Like, if your country is wrong about this, and you're backing all of the American fucking groups, then you're fucking it up. And again, Endocrine Society and WPATH endorses the use of puberty blockers at TANA stage 2 to 3. TANA stage 2. We've already seen.
The American Academy of Family Physicians, the Endocrine Society, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and me being transgender myself.
How can you be down with, like, you didn't go through this. You don't know.
National Association for Transgender Health, and me being transgender myself.
Me being transgender myself, aka because I'm trans, I support anything that I consider pro-trans rather than giving a fuck about the actual shit going on.
This treatment is available via clinics at major institutions, such as Johns Hopkins Children's Center, Boston.
I'm sure I've heard things about Johns Hopkins, but okay.
Children's Hospital Los Angeles, Columbia University Medical Center, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, Children's National Medical Center, and Hasbro Children's Hospital, to name just a few. Not only is this a broad medical consensus, it's a widespread and accepted practice affirmed by decades of clinical experience. So,
I am against it.
Yeah, which has since aged horribly, but okay. Oh, hi, Illuminate. Hope you're good.
I'm against it.
The American Academy of Pediatrics is for it. The American Psychological Association is for it.
How many times? Yeah, we get it. You want to suck off all these organizations. What if they're wrong? We've already realized that the Endocrine Society was wrong in the shit they were saying. So, like, I don't know, man. You might want to rethink this one.
Johns Hopkins is for it. Blair White is against it. Why? Why do tens of thousands of physicians and specialists endorse and provide a treatment?
Is that the physicians? I mean, I guess it might be, considering how big your country is. Is there even that much of a consensus with actual physicians, though?
That's not good enough for Blair.
Some of these places did mastectomies on 12-year-olds. Yes, true. Like, I remember the Boston Children's Hospital, I'm sure they used to advertise that they would give mastectomies to, like, 15-year-olds and up. And I'm sure that mysteriously disappeared at some point.
White.
Yeah, this top is really not working considering she has like 0 tits. It just looks weird.
So here's my first reason, and honestly the biggest reason why I think that children should not be able to medically transition. Being on hormones sterilizes you. A lot of people don't really seem to know that it sterilizes you, I think in part due to all the trashy tabloid headlines like every other week talking about transgender man gets pregnant, but it really does sterilize you. I've been on hormones for about 1.5 years, and
Yeah, the thing is, those trans men getting pregnant, how many of them are even on fucking T at that point? And how long have any of them been on T? Because the thing about taking T as a female, you will almost definitely end up with like atrophy of your ovaries, I think it is. That's why they get hysterectomies. It's because all that shit fucking dies off. Half those organizations endorsed chemically sterilizing gays in the mid-20th century, but they're totally infallible now, of course. Yeah, that sounds about right. Which is odd because usually these people are like, oh, well, trans rights is like the extension of gay rights, but I guess this doesn't count in the same way, you know? Love it.
I am completely 100% sterile. I can never procreate. And if there's anyone out there who thinks that a child, a minor, has enough foresight and the capability of deciding for themselves to sterilize themselves for the rest—
I fully agree with this, by the way. She's just right here. Like, how many of these kids actually understand this shit? How many of these kids have the foresight to know whether they'll want kids by the time they're 20 or 25 or 30 or 35. You know what I mean? People are having kids later and later. Kaiser Hospital in California does SRS on 16-year-olds. Nasty, nasty. I mean, hey, tell me how you know if you want.
Rest of their life. I don't know, get your head checked.
If an adolescent starts taking puberty blockers before they've reached a stage of maturity where sperm begins to be produced, and later goes on to start hormone therapy, then yes, they likely will not be able to reproduce using their own biological material.
It's way more than this. I think it's way more than this.
This is a known issue that's been recognized by professionals in the field, and
In Blair's new video, Brianna, she says she wishes she froze her DNA. Even if you freeze like your sperm or whatever, or your eggs, there is no guarantee that it'll even work. So even that, even like doing like foresight like that, there's no guarantee. The best guarantee is not to take those hormones. They pick and choose which organizations to trust. Yes, very true. If the Endocrine Society were to backtrack on their findings, they would be labeled transphobic. Yes, fully agree. True. And they presumably will have to have backtracked on this shit because Marcy Bowers is saying otherwise. And it shows how experimental and bizarre this kind of treatment is.
identified as needing further exploration.
A friend of yours got it. Shit. That's fucked. I mean, hey, I thought surgery was never happening on kids, but we all know that isn't true, so.
For instance, at the WPATH Symposium this year, one panel reviewed potential fertility issues facing trans youth, and noted that it is possible.
Erin Saft. Diane Erin Saft, is that who that is? Diane Erin Saft, the person who tells you about how you can intuit that your kid must be trans when they can't even speak yet because of like the way they play with stuff. And if they don't like having barrettes in their hair, because there couldn't be any other explanation why someone wouldn't want all this shit in their hair than that they are trans. Fucked. Synthesizing research to date with from the field of reproductive technology, pediatric gender health, along with clinical examples from work within an interdisciplinary university hospital pediatric gender clinic, blah blah. Template will be presented of pathways that providers, youths, and parents have co-created to address fertility and hormone replacement therapy, along with the risks and ethical issues involved, withholding blocker to preserve future fertility versus administering. The thing is, even if you're doing all this and you're like talking the kid through it, you still don't know. You still don't know. Like that kid might feel very differently, regardless of any of this shit. Excuse me, one sec. Also, reproductive technologies are so costly. Normal IVFs have low success rates. Imagine if it's used on a medicalized, trans-identified female. So many other medical considerations. Yeah, true. And them being costly, like, are we kind of fucking over anyone that's like not so well off? I don't know. Teratogen, sorry. From the meaning of Latin, meaning mixture of monsters that causes serious birth defects, including DSD conditions, infertility in offspring. Teratogen, is that like a medication or something? Oh, so it's okay, right. I get you.
Possible for children to delay taking puberty blockers in order to store gametes. Researchers
store gametes, which then might not work. Like, what's the... According to this, with 178 women having treatment using their own thawed eggs in 2016, 18% birth rate. Some way to go before it can be seen as common practice. Bearing in mind this is a bit older. 17% increase. Fewer egg thawing treatment cycles and egg freezing cycles. 2016, NHS funded freeze cycles accounted for just under a fifth of the total. Increase in success rates using own eggs, blah, blah, blah. Highest recorded egg survival rates, over 90%. 19% in 2017. London Women's Clinic. We reported a live birth rate per embryo transferred of 37.9%. Sobering study shows challenges of egg freezing. So look at this before we move on. Are you fucking for real? Are you actually for real? Well, according to this, 39%. And yeah, like the older you do it, the worse. Testosterone in pregnancy is teratogenic. Okay, I get you. Thank you. Like, oh, will survive thawing. So just survival. There was something mentioned 90% survival. That's just kind of the start of it. That doesn't mean it'll even get, what's the word? Or survival of sperm is over 50%. Again, survival. Use of frozen embryos. Okay. So it's we're not getting amazing rates that I'm seeing. It's not like nothing. It's not like you've got no chance whatsoever. Some of this is a bit over my head, I'm gonna be honest. You gotta consider this kind of shit though. You can't just, oh, I'm gonna freeze my sperm and that's it, I'll be able to have kids whenever I want. It isn't really. Ooh, Johns Hopkins. We mentioned them. Fortunately, in some cases, 1/2 or 2/3 might not survive. Like, not even surviving. Effect on age. Yeah, it's not like a given thing. Rates for each embryo put back in the womb. Under 35, success rate is around 32 out of 30, well, 32%, should we say. How long can you store it as well? This is the other thing. What if you never decide you want a kid? Let's say you store it at the age of like 15, by 25, you still don't want kids. But then you get to 30, 35, what about then? Success rates for having a baby. Success rates in thawed sperm vary depending on the quality of the sperm once it's thawed. Freezing and thawing sperm damages some of them. Sperm banking has produced thousands of babies, but doesn't guarantee you'll be able to father a child. No known risk to the man. Following success rates are from the Human Fertilization Embryology Society. These include people having treatment used with IVF. The rates are for each embryo put back in the womb. Under 35, success rate is around 32%, 35 to 39, 19 to 25%, 40 to 42, 11%. So it's not great, you have to understand.
Are also investigating the feasibility of extracting and preserving gonadal tissue for future use in reproduction, an experimental process which has successfully resulted in live births. Additionally,
yes.
Does
that mean that you will? You really don't know. Oh, thank you for following. Illuminate. Thank you.
A clinical review by the LGBT Health and Development Program at Northwestern.
Some are able to conceive. And stop hormone use during adulthood.
University noted that trans people who took blockers in adolescence and continue to take hormones in adulthood can
have a good one, August. Thanks for watching.
Continue these hormones until fertility becomes possible, although this is not certain for everyone.
None of this is certain for everyone. Jesus Christ. You're not selling this, bro. What have we had? Medical organizations say this is good. No real. Like, they said something like how do puberty blockers work? Like, oh man.
The effect of hormone therapy on trans people's fertility has been described in literature.
Yeah, I only have 2 gifs. I have that MX Morphling person or whatever being like, and then I have some deer getting it on, which I actually filmed myself. That was one of my, as a Meriture original is what that one is. genital reproduction, reconstructive, partially reversible impact on fertility. None of this is suggesting that children can like comprehend this kind of shit.
Literature as partially reversible. For instance,
partially reversible. This just sounds damning. Blockers at Tanner stage 2. To be completely fair to Zinnia Jones, I think she did acknowledge that.
Trans women may still be able to provide viable sperm. Quote, for trans people already using hormones, a suspension of hormone treatment is recommended for a few months so that sperm production and quality can recover prior to banking. A study examining the effect of high doses of estrogen suggests that testes function can recover if the dosage is stopped. If interrupting hormone treatment is not an option, poor quality semen can still be frozen for later use.
Yeah, but most of it might not survive. It might not create an embryo. This is not really helping her cause, I gotta say.
Trans women and trans men on hormones who haven't had surgery should not trust that sex will never result in pregnancy. It can. Medical literature makes note of this risk because it is real. Trans men on testosterone.
Also, we're burning it at both ends. Oh, you still might get someone pregnant, so be careful. Well, you still probably could get someone pregnant, even though you've fucked up your body. Oh, man.
Testosterone who become intentionally or unintentionally pregnant are not just tabloid headlines. Thomas Beatty and the 3 children he gave birth to are not tabloid headlines. This has actually happened.
41 completed a surgery. 25 of them had used testosterone. Wow. Much sample size, very wow.
A number of times. Telling trans people across the board that they are
completely 100% sterile
and that they will never be able to reproduce is simply wrong. And more than...
Yeah, but the problem is, you're not saying that it's reversible. And if a child goes down that route and then changes their mind, there is still every chance that they might not be able to. And in pretty much, like, how often does like testosterone... Sorry, I'm looking up a lot of stuff. I do apologize. This is a bit boring. There's like, I'm sure that like frequently trans men get like hysterectomies because of this, like ovarian atrophy. Wanted to show increased numbers of antral. Also, sometimes they end up with similar to PCOS kind of stuff. This definitely happens. I don't have a great source for it right now, but frequently you have to get a hysterectomy because your shit will just atrophy.
That it's dangerous to trans people.
Gigi Gorgeous and Blair were on hormones for 2 to 3. Yeah, there's a video that Blair says she's detransitioning to try and create sperm to father a child. Both turned out to be infertile, unfortunately. Yeah, that's the reality as well. And we're saying that, like, oh, well, you might still be able to have kids one day. Well, it sounds like the odds are you probably won't, even if you take the kind of measures that you can. Oh, hi, Jody. I hope you're good. Hi, Aki Makor. Trans men need hysterectomies after 5 years-ish because atrophy is so bad that things confuse. Okay, thank you. I know it happens, like, frequently. So I don't know. Like, if we're saying that 100% of the time that if you transition, you'll never have kids, that's probably not true. But she's not making a good case for it because the thing is still, if you're a child, you can only really see so far into the future. You don't really know how you're going to feel in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then if you can't conceive after all that time, how are you going to feel?
It encourages them to delay or forego transitioning on the basis of a supposedly absolute outcome that actually...
Delay or forego, and then like transgender kids. Well, then they're delaying it until adulthood, aren't they, you fucking retard?
...consists of many different outcomes and options. And
the fusing is what almost killed Buck Angel. Shit, I'm gonna have to look into that. I don't have time now because I still need to watch the actual debate that they had. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really not. This is a terrible video. This is terrible. Like, the evidence, some of it is like aged fucking horribly. Some of it does not account for the fact that kids are really not going to understand this necessarily and might be left with poor options that won't guarantee them anything.
And it discourages them from taking steps to prevent unwanted pregnancies. This is irresponsible. The absolute outcome that actually consists of many different outcomes and options, and it discourages them from taking steps to prevent unwanted pregnancies. This is irresponsible.
Wait, what's irresponsible?
Absolute outcome, it be able to reproduce, is simply wrong, and more than happened a number of times. Telling trans people across the board that they are
completely 100%.
This feels clip chimped. I don't know what the context for this is, so I'm just going to suspend judgment. Maybe Zinnia's right, maybe Blair's right. Fuck me, maybe Blair is right here. I'm going to suspend judgment. This feels very clip chimped. This is lacking context.
Sterile.
And that they will never be able to reproduce is simply wrong. And more than that,
like, at best, we're getting her on a technicality, and this says nothing about children being able to understand this shit. You know what I mean? This says nothing about any of that. I didn't understand what I was doing as a teenager, and that's my biggest regret ever. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
it's dangerous to trans people. It encourages them to delay or forego transitioning on the basis of a supposedly absolute outcome that
Why is it dangerous to encourage them to delay transition? Why is that dangerous?
actually consists of many different outcomes and options, and it discourages them from taking steps to prevent unwanted pregnancies. This is irresponsible.
Listen, I can't. This is suspicious as fuck. I don't trust this at all. I do not. And we're appealing to harm without actually explaining the harm properly. Delaying is dangerous. Like, people might delay their transition because of it. Why is that dangerous? Why? Because their voice might drop? Oh no. Terrible. Fucking going through your natural puberty and then transitioning is not a fucking death sentence. You might not pass amazingly well. Is passing the be-all and end-all? I don't fucking know. I mean, the best way really is to continue to acknowledge your birth sex and just be happy with, you know, feminizing in comparison to most of your birth sex. I don't fucking know, man.
So another reason, hormones change your body a lot, especially if you're young. A lot of these are actually permanent changes, like these, for instance. And I'm sorry, but the reality is, if that child ever decides to revert or like these, for instance.
Why?
Body a lot, especially if you're young. A lot of these are actually permanent changes, like these, for instance.
Thomas Beatty. Okay, well, if one person managed to do that, then I guess that completely exonerates this person jiggling. Well, there's no tits there, so I don't know what part of yourself you're jiggling. Mate, you're just moving your chest around. What are you doing?
And I'm sorry, but the reality is, if that child ever decides to revert or try to go back, a lot of those things are going to be permanent.
It's true. Hormones do change your body a great deal, particularly during puberty. But children who are not on puberty blockers will undergo these hormonal changes at a much earlier age, whether they're ready for it or not. The onset and progression of their puberty will not be controlled.
Whether they're ready for it or not, puberty is a natural thing, bro.
And it
Oh no, not having to do voice training like D-trans women. Yeah, I know, right? Jesus.
will not be subject to routine and detailed endocrinological and psychiatric monitoring. So how are these hormonal changes of puberty supposed to be considered?
We talk about this monitoring, but like, don't they just affirm? Like, what monitoring are we talking about?
Unacceptable in a tightly controlled and deliberately managed setting, but acceptable in a completely uncontrolled
Like, we're talking about natural puberty, right?
setting. If it's bad for a 16-year-old girl to be able to decide to grow breasts after years of consideration and professional
To decide to grow like, what? At which point, who knows what the puberty blockers have done to them? You know what I mean? Oh, crazy.
consultation, why is it good that an 11-year-old girl will grow breasts without any consideration and any consultation?
It's not about being good. It's just how the body develops. It's just normal. It's just, that's what happens. We shouldn't all be like, I don't know if this person wants to live in a world where like everyone stops their puberty until they're ready for it, if they ever are. There's literally nothing wrong with puberty. In general, no. Like, some people get problems through it and stuff like that. Like, that isn't an argument for stopping people's puberty and making sure everyone is sure before they have it. Like, this is nuts.
You know, we seem to be on the right track with, you know, not letting children get tattoos and piercings. So why exactly would we let them dramatically...
True. Why can you not get a tattoo, but you can decide whether you want to grow breasts or not? Like, what the fuck?
alter their body's physiology?
You know, you can just get older and, like, consent to a cosmetic surgery whereby you have your breasts taken off as an adult when you're able to consent to that and when you're able to think through, like, the ramifications of doing so.
Being a woman is not a tattoo, and
how the fuck would you know?
This is not an accurate parallel. Suppose that every child's body simply began to tattoo itself automatically.
It's a parallel because you're talking about bodily autonomy for children, when children don't have bodily autonomy the way adults do. And they shouldn't, ideally. Unless you want lots of drunk fucking 6-year-olds running around. I don't fucking know.
In certain patterns at puberty. Suppose you knew that for children properly diagnosed with a particular condition, there was a significant likelihood that they would find their emerging pattern of tattoos to be highly distressing throughout the rest of their life. There's a concerning possibility
You're not showing anything, so like, why should I take this seriously?
that as an adult, they will need extensive and scarring tattoo removals, as well as the addition of the tattoos they wanted in the first place.
We're talking about, like, delusion, though. Like, what the fuck?
Suppose you had a treatment that would stop this child's body from developing these tattoos.
I can't do this anymore. This person is disgusting. Fuck this shit. Zinnia Jones. Gross. Disgusting. You know what the fuck you're talking about. You barely engaged with the arguments. Technically, I guess, if you want to say that Blair White's saying you will become sterile, like, every single time, maybe that's not 100% true. That doesn't mean that children know these or understand these decisions that they're making. There's not an argument for children transitioning. Quite frankly, it's ridiculous, preposterous. I can't be asked anymore. There we go. There we go.